Welcome, everyone, and good to see you all. This should be a very cool workshop. Okay, and just if everybody would remember to mute your microphone if you're not speaking, and have your camera on if you can, and then we will just have a good workshop. All right. Are you ready, Katie?
I am.
Okay, we are ready too. Okay.
And I apologize to everyone. I'm having mechanical difficulties, and so I cannot be live in front of you. So again, my apology. My name is Katie Sarah Zale, and I live in Tucson. I teach at Pima College, and I'm president of the Arizona State Poetry Society. I published 4 books, and with my co-editors of Winter in America again, who are present today, we have been touring the Northwest giving readings. And for those of you who were here when we said hello to Michael, he was one of our hosts on the West Coast, so we appreciated that. I hope you've had a chance to read the recent review of the anthology. It was in the link of the email that was sent to you. So today we will get you started writing poems for the ASPS annual contest category titled Winter in America, which we sponsor. Now the deadline is August 31st, so we're very timely. As well, we hope you will submit to our call for poems for the sequel of Winter in America. And the call goes out August 31st, and you may submit to both. So today we will each present a poem from the anthology that reflects our poetic styles and offers a prompt to get you started on some poems. Now, because of time restraints, we will ask only 2 volunteers from each prompt to share their work. When Brenda Wildrick, our ASPS workshop coordinator, sends you a feedback sheet, she will also ask you to contact her if you are interested in joining a writing group, really a feedback group, reflecting on the poems that you just wrote. So I really encourage you to do so because there's wisdom in the community. I'll begin with my answer to the question, what is poetry for? What do I believe poetry is? What do I appreciate the most? So I believe it should transform ourselves. I expect poetry to challenge my perspectives, to make me feel something deeply, not just think, but feel. Sentimentality and cliches turn me off. I love leaps of connection of 2 things seemingly totally disparate. A connection no one has ever made before. I always check, have I heard this before? And if yes, then I'm going to work with that. I happen to like poetry that plays with the interconnection of the past and the present. And I like poetry that reflects a poet who has read a lot about poetry and about the world. Little succinctly. I'm going to share my screen, and if you have your the link that was sent out to you, you can either follow along with this poem by Scott Lawrence, or you can look at the shared screen. So this is so Scott Lawrence. This is on page 134 of the Winter in America. And he's a Cascadian, a Canadian poet, living in the historical coal mining town of Cumberland, British Columbia. All right, this is called American Hero. And the epigraph is for Aaron Bushnell. And says, for Aaron Bushnell, self-immolated to protest the genocide in Gaza, February. Yeah, it really should read 25th, 2024. Now, first of all, I want to say about Aaron Bushnell. He was in the U.S. Air Force. He was 25 years old. And in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., he set himself on fire, which brings to mind Thich Quan Duc, which you may remember set himself on fire, protested the Vietnam War when he was in Saigon. So there's that kind of reference. Second in the epigraph is we don't need guns, we need fire extinguishers. Now the actual quote was said by one of the security guards, and he said, as they were raising the guns, he said, I don't need guns, when guns were pointed at Bushnell. What I need is a fire extinguisher. All right, into the poem. There's an elephant in the room of my heart. Now, the expression elephant in the room is, of course, a cliche. Of my heart changes that. So you can take the old and do something with it that creates something people have not heard before. Then a hole in the word and a fire in the hole. So what he has done is use three phrases that go together that cumulatively have greater meaning than what they each one separately in the sentence. Fire in the hole, if you don't know what that means, is something is going to explode. In the next stanza, sweet man in a bitter smoke. I love the juxtaposition of the sweet and the bitter, playing with opposites. Then he makes references to Burning Man, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a festival in Nevada every year, in which people burn a man figure, a tall figure of a man, to in effigy. So what you see how he is playing with the burning of the immolation and Burning Man, and then trail of fire, trail of tears, all of these seemingly disparate things that together in one stanza have a larger meaning. In the next stanza, they say poetry can save your life. What I see happening in the poem here is it falls into sentimentality. Want to be with him and hold his hand. For me, that would be a red flag, in the poem that something needs revision there. The next stanza, this is my gift to you, young brother, old ancestor, bodhisattva, saint, all these things saying every person, every man, every woman, every individual, just a list of adjectives or descriptions of human beings, and ending it with flair. And you say, well, what's that doing there? But it takes us back to the idea of the virgin. And finally, the ending of it, which I think we all look for in a poem that leaves you with something that wants to bring you back to that poem again and again. I find myself with this, how dare they not allow their hearts to break? I wonder, who's they? And what's meant by dare? And really, is it a question of allowing? And what good is just hearts breaking? So there's a lot of these questions that every time I read it again, I have a different takeaway from it. Yeah, scroll down, Paul, please, and you can see my prompt. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to choose, and you're going to have, 10, 12 minutes to try and work this. But so I want you to choose a powerful image that you've been thinking about recently. Something you're carrying with you that was powerful. And describe it. Go ahead and do it now. Describe it in a short phrase. What is first thing that comes to mind and you go, yeah, when I saw, what is that? Don't think on it too much, just something, anything that comes to mind. Then I want you to just write for a couple minutes about that image, just free write. No poem, don't write a poem, just free write. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Next, what I'm going to ask you to do is highlight or circle the most powerful words or phrases in your free write. Next, start free associating with those highlight words. Include like common and related phrases, maybe historical moments or personal memories. Kind of create a web and just draw a line out and say, oh, just as Scott Lawrence did. He's making associations in threes throughout the poem. So for our purposes today, what I'm going to ask you to do is don't try and write a whole poem. Instead, work on an approach to the information that you have so far, but an approach to a potential poem in a manner that you've not tried before. Think back on Scott Lawrence, how he played with, you could end up just finding an epigraph, or you could find phrases in threes that are seemingly unrelated, but they all go back to your main, your first image. And then I'm going to ask you, when you're done, I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers. I'm going to ask you for what is your main image and what technique you attempted writing about with that image. Challenge yourself, surprise yourself.
How long do we have?
Oh, let's start with 5-8 minutes, and I'll check with you. Remember, this is just working on one small, different technique that you may not have used before, not a complete poem. Can you bring it to a close, your thoughts? Do I have a volunteer that would like to share what a part of or of what you wrote? And please tell us what your image is first and then read. You brave souls, I know. We're all in the same boat, just going for minutes, which is hard.
I'll be happy to.
Mo- Who said, I saw Monique's hand first. Was that you, Christy?
Yeah, I can go next.
Okay, Monique, unmute yourself, please, and start with your image, and then tell us what you were trying to do.
Just trying to keep on writing, but image was a dream from this morning. A man is pounding on the window, yelling, screaming, "Let me in, let me in." I run from the window, tell my daughter, "Upstairs, upstairs, call 911." We race up the wood stairs. I wake up, it's still dark. I hear noises outside the glass sliding door of my bedroom. How much longer till daylight? I relax, only 1 hour. I remember his fists on the glass, pounding, screaming, run, race, fists. All I have is a baseball bat. I don't have a gun. What if he doesn't stop, gets in? Crazy man, stranger, foaming, "Let me in, let me in." Fleeting thought, what if he needs help? We run upstairs, dream house, no escape from upstairs. Will someone come to save us? I stand in line in daylight, feet squared, tell myself, no, I am not a warrior. I am a pacifist, but I am a guardian. I am a protector. I am in and out of time, standing on wide plains, everywhere horizon, wheat sways, corn rustles. We are children of the sky.
So what I'm seeing in this, Monique, is you really got started, you got started, and then towards the end, you really went to these leaps of connection to other things that I know I would find myself going back and saying, the wheat, what does all this have to do with the original story? But that's what makes it exciting. That focus on that part of the poem.
Thank you.
Yeah. Christy, did you want to go next? Please tell us your image and what you were trying to do, and then share what you were.
The images of in my mind, of the burning man, and how it relates to now and a past. So that's kind of what. Well, I'll just read what I wrote. Yeah. Nothing but ash on the pavement, reminder of a monk in his orange garment, or is my memory of that photo, violence and serenity side by side, superimposed on the present? Does it make a difference to the world, to the smiling, insane, self-declared king? Purposeful death, like purposeful life, a statement as shattering as a brick born from pressure and fire.
So you started out right away with that, playing with ash, and then a leap to monk, and then a leap to king. And so all of those, and I want everyone to understand is that making these leaps, what it allows to your reader is for them to fill in the blanks. And that's what makes a poem interesting. When you come back to the poem the next time, funny, because that's what our imagination does. You're a different person and you fill in those blanks differently. When I heard her say king, I couldn't help thinking of our ruler, our administration now. And what's that got to do with burning and monks? And so thank you, Christy, for that example. A quick question. Anybody have a question for me before we move on to our next presenter? All right, I'm going to just take that as you guys got it, and you're going to take that prompt and play with it at home. And I wish you well with that. Okay, I guess Allia, you are up next.
I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to what you'll create after this workshop, and hopefully you will all share and submit to the next round of the volume. We think that it's very important for folks to commune and to talk about what's happening in our world in a variety of ways, from a variety of perspectives. So so you have my document I'm sharing, but I'm going to just talk through the first part and then talk about the poems. So basically, so my name is Allia Abdullah-Matta. I'm a professor at CUNY LaGuardia Community College and a poet. And I teach poetry, I teach creative writing, teach Africana studies literature, ethnic studies literature. So my background and my interests have really inspired the kind of work that I do and what I'm looking for. So primarily, I like to just start with my early influences of poetry and thinking about, I really was coming of age during the Black arts movement and that period, late 60s, early 70s. So it was a time when poetry by Amiri Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, many, many others, right, were really speaking to and representing the voices of the Black community in the US and then, eventually African diasporic. And I like to start with that because they had a very specific philosophy around what the poem should do, what they should say, who they should represent, and how culture, experience, voice, and a politics of visibility is really significant, right? So and I also just like to add that there are a number of contemporary poets who start there too and who are writing out of this tradition, right? We could go back to we could look at these folks that are doing this now, right? Terrence Hayes, Mahogany Brown, Evie Shockley, Jessica Care Moore, and I could go on. And it extends beyond just, you know, the kind of, I would say beyond the Black community, because these folks are really situated in the, you know, in this, I don't like to use the word canon, but you understand, in this kind of collective of diverse American voices. And I think that that's also very important. So Baraka says, poems are bullshit unless they are teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step, or Black ladies dying of men leaving nickel hearts, beating them down. We want live words of the hip world, live flesh and coursing blood, hearts, brains, souls, splintering fire. And so when I'm looking at poetry and looking at the things that interests me, I'm looking for, you know, how language comes up, imagery, perspective, voice, and those are, I think, and I think it's also very important to recognize that that comes in a lot of different iterations. I'd like to also add that though I kind of start my own poetics and aesthetics trajectory thinking about these two poets in particular, right? I also look at a lot of the work and aesthetics that come out of different movements, surrealism, imagism, futurist, right? Dada. So I really have the lens from these folks who studied a lot of these movements, right? And then it allows me to kind of look for those images and to understand how to use language more complexly, right? And so I'm always looking at work that's really doing that, right? And then in Sonia Sanchez, of course, I'm just pointing to her essay, but she's, you know, I think she's going to be 91 this year and still writing. You know, her essay, The Poet is the Creative of Social Values, is a very important essay. It talks about, it lays out what the work of the poet should do and how the poet should be vested in, you know, speaking to humanity and representing humanity. Her essay frames a foundation of a politics of voice and visibility in my mind and practice. Sanchez states the power that the poet has to create, preserve, or destroy social values depends greatly on the quality of, and I add for emphasis here, the poet's social visibility and the functionary opportunity available to poetry to impact lives. And so for me, poetry must impact lives, and how it impacts lives does not have to be the same way, right? I think that people should connect in some way, whether that be imagery, language, you know, perspective. So keeping these ideas in mind, I read poetry for pleasure and to be better at the craft. And I think that poets are always crafting and always, you know, I want to say picking up new tricks to put in their poetic toolbox, right? Um, in this way, I'm looking for specific things, what the poem says and what it does, what it looks like on the page. I always tell my students, pretend the page is a canvas and lay the poem out on the page in any way that you think works. What it does for or to me, right? How something, I want to walk away from a poem with something. And I don't know what that thing is all the time, right? My favorite is when I walk away and say, oh, wow, I wish I had written that. Like, it's so amazing in all these ways that I wish it was something that I was able to accomplish, right? So, and does it strike me in some way? Does it hold me? And what are the holding emotions and language? So I'm very conscious of whether or not it makes a statement around the language piece, what it's doing, how it's crafted, how it's constructed. Is it using alliteration, metaphor, whatever? Is it experimental? Is it abstract? I think there's a huge box that all of that kind of fits into. In terms of what I look for as a reader, a teacher, and a poetry editor, there are overlapping elements, right? These various roles affect the way I select and comment on the work. I look for the story of the poem, how the poem resonates on the page, or it sounds to my ear when read out loud. What is the poet telling or teaching us about the world? What voices are represented in the poem? And has the poet done the job of showing the thing we should take away from the poem? And again, I want to reiterate, this thing really is multiple things, right? Because it's also who you are in relation to the poem and what you take away from the poem and what you bring to your understanding of the poem. So I think that's also very important. So I'm pulling out some clear examples from the volume that we've already done that to me are grasping these qualities in different ways, right? So the first one is The Poet Sea by Keisha Gay Anderson, which is on page 32 of the book. The poets see things others want to disappear or forget, like bodies stacked on trucks, moving quietly after midnight, or forged documents to make a child a wife. So that's a clear example of, what the poet see, what the poem is doing, and there's some vivid imagery here. Number 2, Bedtime Poem for America by J.P. Howard, page 113. This blue is my body, this red is my blood, this blood tastes like home. These stars sewn on black of my skin shine when night comes. So again, these lines, and the for me with JP's poem in particular, these lines are so short and they do so much, in the length of the line, and then how she's using, red, white, blue, and black, right? Number 3, Americana Was My Grandmother's Glory by Cheryl Jackson, 119. Americana doesn't see us. We're the silent seamstress, holding on to hope and covering ourselves in our grandmother's glory. We vote because our grandmothers could. So this to me is also a very strong statement around, positionality and experience and culture. And the last example I have for today is from our very own Paul Nelson, Self-Care Tips for the New Winter in America. Stay sober. No amount of wine can erase the enabled hate. Don't worry. Worry's a misuse of the imagination Deprima knows as holy. Grieve, then organize. Recognize your bioregion. Ginkgo leaves still fall. Watch them fall. Breathe again. Vow kindness. So all of these, and I had about 10 for you, but couldn't go forever. All of these excerpts from these larger poems from our collection, right, really point to those things that I think are important. I'm looking at what the poem is doing on the page, what it's saying, who's it representing? Is it instructing us around something? Is it helping us understand the world better or cope? So I think that these are the kinds of things that we're looking for in the work, right? We want to see a variety of perspectives and of folks who are really working with language very solidly. So I have 2 prompts for you, and you'll have time to kind of pick one and decide which one you want to do. So the first one is to grab a line or 2 or an image from these excerpts and free write for 2 minutes. And then write a poem that could be in conversation with the lines or pieces. Think about the larger story and or context of the poem and how it says something about A, America, or B, how to respond to the drama and trauma of America. And then C, how do we continue? So in this prompt, you're going to attempt to do A or B, not both, unless you're really ambitious. And if you are, salut, right? But then I definitely want to see or hear that. So, or want you to think about, did you do A and end with C? Or did you do B and end with C? How do we continue? And there are a number of poems in the collection, like Paul's poem, who kind of give us some tips, instructions to move and cope and to live through these things that we're experiencing as a nation. So for C, write a list of instructions that will help us all be better and to know better. So of course that could be in any direction you'd like to take it. So once again, you're going to write for 2 minutes, and then you're going to begin to create a piece focusing on A or B and then C. That's one option. Option 2, select 6 words across the excerpts that you will incorporate into your poem. Use these words to jumpstart your writing and go wherever they take you. How does your piece arrive at or represent an antidote for winter in America? So again, thinking about the reason why we wanted to work on this collection, why we are continuing to work on this collection and in another volume, and just to give you some sense of of the kinds of work that, that we're interested in, and not exclusively, right? I just want to make that clear because we all have, different aesthetics. So let's start. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to do, I'll say you take your 2 minutes and then you'll do your other, I would say 10 minutes of writing. Okay. And then you'll know that, and I'll just give you halfway marks. Okay. Okay. Uh, anyone, would a couple of people like to share? Okay, that's David, and anyone else? And you can just go right behind them if you like. Is that you, Cynthia? Okay, David and then Cynthia, please. Oh, we had someone else too. Oh, okay. Oh, quite a few of you. Okay.
Shall I
David? Oh, yeah, yes, please start. Sorry.
go out and find the places unseen in America in our fallen and shattered world where wonder abides still? Poets see parts of the world that are ugly will one day heal. Blood shines when night comes. We are all pilgrims. What if we come from a place grown from fear we hate the most? Don't worry. We walk across this land each step for the last time, not to be repeated, when we celebrate Grandma's America. We rest each of the night with this bedtime poem.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. Can see some of the elements, and I hope you'll keep working on it, and I hope we get to see it completed. Cynthia, can I cheat and have one more person, 3? Is that okay? My co-facilitators. Let's see. All right, Cynthia H. Hey, girl.
Hi, Aaliyah. Um, what is the antidote to hate enabled, glory misused? One nation's glory is divisible by its nature, glory being fame or renown, such a flammable commodity. My grandmother's glory, my grandmother's glory, lifted up by farming and ranching to loving a wide Montana sky, was bathed at the roots by Salish blood and the territorial hunger of poor white folks escaping landowners on the eastern seaboard.
Oh, damn. I'm I'm thrilled. I think that you are, I mean, I'm sorry because I saw some other hands, but I've been admonished that I can only call in 2 people. Sorry. But I hope you will continue to do this beautiful work. It, you know, I already felt where it was going and how it could be really valuable to the next volume. So, thank you all. I don't know if anyone has any questions. If not, we'll move to our next facilitator.
You know, if we
Hey,
have time,
hey,
if we have
everybody.
time,
Sorry, Katie, go ahead.
sorry. If we have time at the end, we can, I just want to be respectful to our facilitators and what they, and so we'll see how the time goes.
Thank you. And it sounds like the prompt that I also very carefully designed to go in accordance with the poem I'm getting ready to read, and also for our next edition, is something that we probably don't have time to do today. So it will be one of those that you can work on your own. So I'm Roxy Power, and gosh, Aaliyah, before I talk about myself, I just want to say I really loved the Baraka poem that you chose, and his line, "Poetry is bullshit. It is lemons piled on a step, etc." Or like Keisha Gay Anderson said, ominously, bodies stacked on trucks. So those amazing images can say more in the language of poetry, as we know, than sometimes our explanations do. Um, so a little bit about my background. My book, The Songs That Objects Would Sing, was published in 2023. And I co-founded the trans-genre anthology series Viz Interarts at UCSC, where I've taught for 27 years, and I podcast for the Hive Poetry Collective in Santa Cruz. The interview with Paul Hoover and his longtime collaborator Maxine Chernoff will air tomorrow, 8 p.m. at ksqd.org, or you can hear it wherever you get your podcasts after some time next week. I'll just play an excerpt today in a moment. So, the interesting and challenging thing about our anthologies, the one we just did and the one we will be doing, is that we 4 co-editors have very different aesthetics and are connected to different communities, and we're trying to create a conversation between these communities rather than just speaking to our own tribal echo chambers, since that rather common practice might have been responsible for where we find ourselves actually in this divided country we're in. So we each wrote a poetics statement, and here's mine. I'm excited by poetry that makes unexpected leaps, leaps between worlds, ideas, linguistic registers, feelings, etc. Poetry that is paradoxically grounded in unknowability and uncertainty. Exploratory poetry open to revelation rather than reproduction of what's been done. Once it swerves into dogma and formulas, shoulds, or if I recognize the epiphany that's coming, your one wild and precious life, that's Mary Oliver. I have wasted my life. That's James Wright. I love that poem, by the way. Even you must change your life, Rilke. I sometimes grow a little sad that the poet's one wild and precious imagination, oops, and its own strange music has been co-opted. I personally love the oddness of surrealism and pastiche, humor and linguistic play, over pronouncements and confessions, though I sometimes get co-opted by that tendency myself. I love poetry that swings on the branches of other genres, jazz, painting, philosophy, history, to somewhere new. If I'm lucky, or they're lucky, or we're lucky. Kenneth Koch said poetry is its own language, like French. And I think your poetry is its own language. And as you know, probably the Romantic poets from England in the late 18th century, in tandem with the democratic revolutions in France and America that were taking place at the time, said that poetry is the language that is the most, that helps democracy thrive, because we're listening and producing our own imagination rather than walking lockstep with people that we're afraid of, sometimes communities that we're afraid of not belonging to. Anyway, so you don't have to translate your poetry for other people. Your poetry is its own language. But you don't have to practice it according to someone else's rules. Please don't. But it's good to practice it like a flute until you love your own songs, unless you were assigned to play the flute like I was in 5th grade and you didn't like that instrument. So I'll be talking about Paul Hoover's poem, Signs and Wonders, on page 108. Other than his many books of poetry and translations, you'll hopefully know Paul for his amazing editorship of his 2 editions of Postmodern American Poetry and of the groundbreaking journal New American Writing. Both works put the many schools associated with the designation postmodern, which is a word that scares a lot of people, right, on the map of serious poetic and academic inquiry. And as such, we're usually kind of shunted to the back of whatever room there is, and like, or poetry reading series or podcast series. I'm that person who is always kind of having to negotiate with everyone. Can we have this poem in, even though it's not immediately understandable? But because of his works, we no longer can say, oh, I don't get it, and just poo-poo it. We have to take this a little bit more seriously, do a little bit more work with the poems. Postmodern literally just refers to the period after 1945. But as most of us know who have taken the time to read the work that's associated with any of these schools, many of its groundbreaking ideas about how meaning is made is actually coming out of modernist thought, including the Austrian logician Kurt Gödel and his first incompleteness theorem published in 1931. Now, in case I've already lost you with that, we're going to be working in a deep kind of way with Hoover's epigraph from Kurt Gödel. So let's see. Let's, at this point, possibly share the screen. I think that might be a good practice to do at this point, although I will just read it for you too. So the epigraph, which as we know is just a quote that you put at the beginning of your poem, if it is consistent, it is incomplete. If complete, inconsistent. That blew my mind, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. So I think that probably what Paul Hoover was doing was just playing with it like you do in poetry through images. And one way I interpreted it was, how can we embrace an authentic existence which includes the humility of not centering our own way of looking at reality as being the way, of embracing uncertainty, or an experimental blind, in a posture of openness, a willingness to discover a new way of seeing or understanding. And that's what my writing prompt is about at the end. No, Roxy doesn't think she's screen sharing right now. Sorry. I thought that, I'll just do it. I thought maybe Paul was going to because of this thing about sound, but let me just do it. Hold on. He's a little bit better at playing the sound bit. So I'll just say that, as you're listening to this excerpt from an interview in which Paul Hoover reads his own poem and we talk about it, and it's nice to hear his voice because it's so soothing. It's always nice to hear the actual poet's voice. You might be thinking about specifically the relationship between that epigraph and what follows. And here's the prompt that you can be thinking about as well as you listen. A simple version is to skip the first part where you generate a word list, but I always do that. I always just write for 2 minutes and generate phrases and words that then I make myself plug into the poem because it creates that counterpoint, kind of a musical counterpoint where you have to play off of it, right? You're not totally in control. And that was my point. The unknowability, the uncertainty is exciting. 2, you can just start there here. Sorry. Choose a quote for an epigraph. And I give you a bunch at the end to choose from if you want. Preferably one that's a little unknowable so that you can write your way into discovery. Okay? 3, choose a group of people in a specific place. In Hoover's case, workers in Coalinga and Bakersfield, California, the so-called land of plenty. And then what events in particular since the election are they affected by? Because our anthology is going to cover events since the election. And so I wanted to train your minds to be thinking about specificities. What group of people? Where are they? What are they going through? Optional. If you want to try out the cadences of a particular mode of writing, Hoover's dad was a preacher, so he knew biblical cadences. For they live in Bakersfield, for they this, for they that is very Old Testamental. Try that out, but that's a layer, right? So you don't need to do that. Just an epigraph right in relationship to it. The first one I gave you was, thus it is that no group ever sets itself as the one without setting the other over against it. Why woman has been defined as the other, Simone de Beauvoir. So there's some philosophy, and then there's some poetry quotes, like, I like Frank O'Hara's. But how can you really care if anybody gets it, your poem, or what it means, or if it improves them? Improves them for what? Death? Okay, so let's look at this poem and listen to it as well. So what I'm going to do is see if I have learned from you, Paul Nelson, about how to do this and talk me through it. Here's the interview.
Gorgeous and compressed language, as you're
Okay.
known for.
Can you guys
I
hear
think
it?
we need to move on to a poem.
Okay, all right. So Paul, I'm going to stop the screen share. Can you help me out here? Because I think what's happening is possibly my AirPods,
I heard it.
AirBuds. Oh, you did? I saw
Yeah.
someone
Yeah, we
shaking
heard
their
it.
head.
Yeah, we heard it.
Well, it was Cynthia who shook her head no.
Yeah. Did anybody?
Okay.
Did
All right.
everybody?
One more time. Let's see. Sorry about that. So problem is when I share it, as you can see, what you see is this, screen. So you can't see the poem. Paul Nelson had a thought that we could do both.
Yeah, right now you can go to the tab just to the left.
Ah, I gotcha.
And
All
you
right.
hit-
So
you
yeah.
start the sound and then go to the
Yeah.
other tab.
Yeah. I know. Now I gotcha. So the main thing is just let me play a second and everybody, I need communication. Give me a thumbs up. If you need it louder, let me know. Here it is.
Gorgeous and compressed language, as you're known for. I think we need.
All right, then here we go.
So
Thanks
let it continue to play and then
Yeah, you're right. Hold on. Damn it. Let it continue to play. And now how can I get back to it?
it's the tab right next. It's the tab right
Oh,
next.
yeah.
I believe it's that.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yep, you're right.
Need to move on to a poem by Paul Hoover now, also a newer poem by him called Signs and Wonders, because it's all, not only is it one of his newer poems in his new and selected called Oh and Green, and because its own design requires us to move in and out of history's grasp to get it. When I asked Paul if he'd send some work to our anthology, Winter in America Again, Poets Respond to 2024 Election, Signs and Wonders was the first poem I received, and I was thrilled. I had a sense that, okay, all will be well. And of course, Maxine's great poetry is also in the anthology. But Paul, it wouldn't hurt to set the poem up with just a brief, if you want, bit about the modernist Austrian logician Kurt Gödel, whose ideas permeate this poem. His incompleteness theorem, published in 1931, is not easily paraphrased, but one key idea is that you can't use logic to prove logic. No axioms can render true all mathematical statements of truth. That one's hard for me to understand, but it did kind of remind me of my sense that what I've read about Derrida, his theory of radical undecidability at the heart of logic is kind of like Derrida destabilizing the metaphysical foundations of Western philosophy. We like our binaries, we like our rights and wrongs, our goods and bads, our gods to lead us, as you say. Uh, you know, but I also don't see either one of you as much, you don't have any Eliot footnotes in your poems. So you may not want to say more before you read, but is there anything that the listeners would find helpful to know before you read?
Well, the Kurt Gödel, I'm not a philosopher, but I love to read about philosophy because it's always deals with puzzlement. It raises often more questions than it can answer. And I think the poetry that I'm drawn toward is on the mystical side. Like there's puzzlement throughout, but it's fertile contradiction.
Love that.
So here I'll read the quote. If it is consistent, it is incomplete. If complete, inconsistent. Now you could sit at the bus stop and think about that the rest of the day. What is the after there? And why did I use this for the poem that comments on the American scene? And Signs and Wonders was an Eliot title also. But the secret behind all these poems, Gravity's Children, that they're based on the Old Testament. I was raised in the Church of the Brethren, which holds to the New Testament. It's kind of like Amish and Mennonites. Everywhere we lived, there were Amish out in the country. And yeah, my dad was a minister of the church.
Oh.
But so I wind up writing about the Old Testament, which is completely foreign to me. Should I start the poem? Signs and Wonders. If it is consistent, it is incomplete. If complete, inconsistent. Kurt Gödel. For it will happen that they live in Bakersfield in the gardens of Coalinga, where they enter the rock and live in the rock and remain in the rock when they die. For their high definition eyes are more than nature and art, and the dust of their seeing paints them from within. For they please themselves with images and images of images. Their lips are stung by bees, their breasts yield no milk. The miser lies down with the master, the skinny clerk with the fat. For the land of the plenty is the land of baristas. For their sisters work at Walmart and their unions are non-existent. They prepare the table with Popeyes, fuel desire with lottery tickets, and live forever downwind from the disaster. Signs of trees, but no trees. Images of water, but nothing clear to drink. They burn at the sight of beauty, are reckless without cause, rational without understanding. Among the owls and bats, they hang from the buildings and bridges, for nothing has been saved for the winter, and summer is but half constructed. The opossum dances with his mistress, as the priest with his god, the rabbit with his mechanic, as the needle with its habit. For a suckling child shall lead them through the streets of Mexico City. Though the amusements are shuttered and the wind burns cold, the sands of Coney Island shall be the flames of amazement. For when their forests are bare, a child will write them back into existence, one branch at a time, until the wilderness fills with words and Gödel's theorem is enacted. Gödel is consistent. How shall we incomplete him? Gödel, tea kettle. What was the future today? How can we be one now that mastery's gone? What rights must be wrong?
Sorry, everybody, this part of the poem didn't get on. There's just a few more lines, so you'll just have to listen to it. So let me go back to this.
What songs have we unsung?
Let me just do our little station identification. I'm Roxy Power with the Hive Poetry Collective at KSQD 90.7 FM in Santa Cruz and KSQT in Prunedale. And we're talking with Paul Hoover and Maxine Chernoff about their new and selected books published by Mad Hat Press. Well, I find myself thinking about truth claims, speaking of Gödel, that are being made about working class populations in areas of California, not usually associated with the so-called land of plenty, Bakersfield and Coalinga. I had to do a little research into Coalinga, whose main industries are incarceration and oil, apparently. And Chevron basically owns the town. So the
Yeah,
rock that the residents live and die in could be the rock that is fractured for oil and fracking, or a metaphor for prison, or probably something biblical that I don't understand, because that rock appears again in the final poem from this book that you will be reading at the end of our interview. You want to say anything about the rock in your?
Well, the rock is the impenetrable object,
Okay.
stoniness. I realized that what I was doing was cultural critique about the condition of the U.S. And what we hold dear, and sometimes what we hold dear is cheap and easily had, and it's not well earned.
Right.
But I certainly didn't want to comment negatively on the working class people.
Sure. And and we're also fed truths by this digital world that you refer
Right.
to, by the high definition eyes that could be about security cameras, but also
Yes.
the digital world, or even the Foucauldian panopticon, where we come to
Sorry.
police ourselves through the eyes of the power structure. Hence, the
I-
working classes, the affected by the loss of unions in the land of baristas, and those are the ones who are voting for politicians who eliminate unions.
Right.
So that rock
Mm.
turns into the dust of their seeing that paints them from within. So I'm very interested in this particular line. I might have to call on one of you to help me with that. It feels very disturbing. Nothing is, they please themselves with images and images of images. That follows from that line. That's a little bit easier to grasp. And I said a little bit about it already, but the high def, the eyes are more than nature and art, and the dust of their seeing paints them from within.
But what we're inhabited, culturally inhabited by certain mythologies that are presented to us and ready-made. To be an American is to be different from an African. Your model is given you right from the first word you speak.
Ah,
So the world
Yeah.
paints you. The world paints you.
Yeah, that's right.
got it.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
painted world and the world paints you.
That's so much more beautiful than all the research I was trying to do. I remember Hofstadter's, I used to say Gödel, but now I'll say Gödel, Escher, and Bach. That book that I read when I was 18 or tried to, about strange loops and something about hierarchies and the structure and self-referentiality that gives rise to a sense of I within the human mind. And I was thinking, okay, how do we come to a sense of ourself? How is it hierarchical? How do we internalize a caste system, I guess, that it emerges from the external world, as you were saying?
Yes. Caste system, that's exactly right.
That is the Bell Wilkinson book, right?
Yes, yes. So,
We
but
have a
there's a
caste system.
lot of subtle paradoxes that are at the heart of these various truth claims. They prepare the table with Popeyes, fuel desire with lottery tickets, and live forever. And this is what I was talking about earlier, your purposeful line breaks, and live forever. So then there's a line break here, which makes us think they're immortal until the enjammed next line. Downwind from the disaster. They don't live forever,
Yeah.
just forever downwind from the eco
Yeah,
disasters afoot, wherever the poor live, you know?
on the floodplain.
Yeah.
Right. I was so happy when I found Gettle Gettle Tea Kettle.
I was so happy you found that too. That's my favorite line. You have a few of these nursery rhyme like moments in some of your poems. They just kind of break out into sudden hilarious song.
The longer I've been writing poetry, the more I want it to sound well. And I don't plan anything out, but I like chiming instances to be present. It gives speed.
It's also a nice way to change the mood suddenly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock.
Right.
Yeah, and yet then you follow it with kind of a serious question. Gettle gettle tea kettle. What was the future today? The future's already happened.
Because the future is a construction.
Right.
It's
like
an
a sign
imaginary. Yeah.
or prophecy.
And so every day we wonder what our future will be.
Yeah.
Every day our future might change.
And you know, Maxine, I heard you laughing in the background when he read the opossum dancing with his mistress.
Right.
Yeah.
I imagine you guys writing lines that, you know, make each other chuckle, and that makes me chuckle.
Sorry.
That reminds me of something that I saw you post. Is this okay to say on Facebook about the only good news lately has been about the possum. I have no idea. Can you just quickly tell us about a bit of good news so we can chuckle again?
Oh, well, the good news is that opossums, even though look scary and ugly and have a lot of teeth, are one of the best insect eating, safe animals you can find in the universe, and you should all be nice to possums. That's the point.
That was wonderful, and I think because we have so many more wonderful poems to come.
And we do, and we have Paul coming up, but I'll just say again, any questions about my prompt that you can do on your own, try not to be too intimidated, but maybe like just choose something that's not totally familiar to you so that you're kind of dancing with it. And favor images if you can. Questions about the prompt or about the poem or about what the heck about including unknowability? Why do that? All right. Thank you for listening, everyone. Stop my share. Paul E. Nelson, you're up.
How's everyone doing? Hanging in there? What an afternoon. Man, there's so much good material here. It's kind of intimidating. It's hard to keep up with everything. So I hope that you're all hanging in there. Let me go to the screen share. And I don't think I have the right tab up, so I'm going to go to the proper tab here. Here we go. By the way, I put the ending in there, Roxy. Sorry, a little late. How can we be one now that mastery's gone? What rights must we wrong? What songs have we unsung? From Isaiah. And that poem just gets better and better each time I hear it. We saw it when it was submitted for the consideration in the anthology. We've read it to each other. I've heard Paul read it a couple of times now because I listened to the podcast last night, and there's just more and more that we get out of it. How does poetry enact or include, or how is it connected to, that rich, having a very rich subtext where you can get more and more out of it each time? It's like any good art. Like a pop song, you like it the first time you hear it, you heard it 3 or 4 times, and then it maybe has the danger of becoming an earworm, but I don't think it really changes your life. Or that painting, maybe going to see Guernica, which is all of a sudden relevant once again in our time. Is it ever not relevant? I hope someday it will be not relevant. So I'm going to go to my section of this document, and this document is alive. We keep adding things. I add the endings of poems, for instance, and here's my little segment. And I don't know, Roxy, if we can include the new document or just to include the link so people could click on this, because as is my habit, I've larded my document with hypertext links.
So you want me to click on hypertext links?
I mean, you can if you want, but right now, I'm just going to
tell me when. Yeah.
a little by. No, I've got it. I'm sharing now.
Oh, okay.
I founded the Cascadia Poetics Lab in December of 1993, and the Cascadia Poetry Festival, which is happening October 10th through the 12th here in the Rainier Beach neighborhood of Seattle, where I am. Looking at this view, if you can see through my little screen, that's Lake Washington there, and the festival will be not far from that lake. PaulENelson.com is my personal website. CascadiaPoeticsLab.org is the organizational site. There's my email should you need to get in touch with me, and links to a couple of my books, A Time Before Slaughter / Pig War and Other Songs of Cascadia, American Sentences, 17-syllable poems, and Cascadian Prophets, my second book of interviews. Poetry is the language for a state of crisis, Stéphane Mallarmé. So here's my statement. I prefer poetry that foregrounds the prophetic over providing comfort. The word duende comes to mind. And if you don't know what that phrase is, there's a link to the essay by Federico Garcia Lorca, which I would encourage you to study. Poetry must strive for a state beyond the irritable reaching that Keats warned about, beyond the known. Funny thing, while I was doing the exercises, as I was typing, AI was suggesting certain words or phrases. And I think that's a really good sign that you shouldn't write what AI recommends. If AI can predict it, it's too predictable and that'd be a good time to try something else. I don't know if you've ever heard of the personal universe deck that Michael McClure did. 100 words that define your personal universe. But it's a good exercise, and I can send you that link if you're interested. And that'd be a good thing to put in the place of a cliche that even AI sees coming, as it did as I was writing. It was a brutal feeling. Okay, I'll go back to the screen share. Prophetic poetry requires risks, discomfort, a syntax particular to each poem, which means you can feel free to let go of traditional grammar. I think it impedes the real power of the poem. Prophetic poetry is a high energy construct and favors luminous details over generalizations and abstractions, and potency over readability. It goes beyond the ego state and its opinions, a use of speech at its least careless and least logical. So some of those phrases are from Charles Olson, Projective Verse, which I have on my site. I'm going to go to a different tab here and just pick out this one, for instance. And if I type in paulenelson.com, and it started a new tab. Are you looking at the old or the new one? I can't tell.
We see Poetry Postcard Fest.
That's what I was afraid of. So let me just do that. It popped into a new one there for a second. That's not what I wanted. So this is what I want right here. So what I did was for the workshops that I do, now known as Life as Rehearsal for the Poem or Poetics as Cosmology, I put together this page of essays which describe the poetics. And this is always growing. And so it goes on and on and on, and all kinds of good material which I would highly encourage. I mentioned those essays by Charles Olson, Projective Verse. Those are all of these I think are well worth looking at, and I think you can get a lot from. So I'm going to put that in the chat so you have a link to that, all those. And then go back to this tab. So what I wanted to do is offer the opportunity to write a postcard poem. And if you're not like me and don't have although I'm downstairs now because my wife's on a Zoom call and it was her turn to go downstairs yesterday and my turn to go downstairs today. It would be about 8 feet from me, this nightstand with a couple of drawers and perhaps 600 postcards in it. I could take one and, you could write an ekphrastic poem by looking at the image or any number of things. But to give a sense, something about sonnet length, something about 12 or 14 lines is what I'm looking for in this writing exercise that I'm gonna offer to this workshop. So if I go back, what I'd like to do is read a little bit about epistolary poetry. And this is an essay by Sam Hamill, and it's on that link with paulenelson.com/poetics. So I'm going to click on that, and yes, and hopefully it works. It doesn't work. Well, I can find it on the other link. If I go like this and go back up to the H's and see Sam Hamill, epistolary poetry. Can you see the essay, epistolary poetry? You can, yeah. The poem is letter. The letter is poem. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read some. This is typical. If you've ever met Sam Hamill or if you knew him, you can hear it in his voice. I won't replicate that, but I'm capable of doing, a decent Sam Hamill impression. Several years ago in Missoula, at the customary after the reading bash, I was approached by a young grad school poet. I didn't realize that you were a former student of Richard Hugo's, he said. I'm not, but you write letter poems, he declared. And that's an invention of Dick's. With all the specializing and pigeonholing done by scholars, it has always astonished me that no one, to my knowledge, has written on epistolary poetry as a genre. The poem as letter has been with us for nearly as long as we've had written poetry. In the Western tradition, the honor of inventing the genre is generally bestowed upon Quintus Horatius Flaccus, a Latin poet who preceded Hugo by roughly 2,000 years. And ever since Horace, the letter poet has been prominently evident, especially during the 17th and 18th centuries, when English poets were much taken with imitations of the Horatian epistle. In 1804, Wordsworth wrote to a young lady who had been reproached for taking long walks in the cemetery, "Dear child of nature, let them rail. There's a nest in a green dale, a harbor and a hold, where thou a wife and friend shalt see thy own heart-stirring days and be a light to you and old," so on and so forth. 1,000 years before Wordsworth, the great masters of tongue poetry, Libo and Du Fu, were writing copiously in the same genre. Pound has translated Libo's The River Merchant's Wife, a letter, and Exile's Letter. Shigeyoshi Obata translated Addressed Humorously to Du Fu with the following footnote. In contrast with Libo, who depended largely on inspiration, Du Fu was a painstaking artist, careful of the minutest details. The poem is a marvelous example of just why the genre is so universally appealing. Here, is this you on the top of Fan Coal Mountain, wearing a huge hat in the noonday sun? How thin, how wretchedly thin you have grown. You must have been suffering from poetry again. Much of the charm in the letter poem lies in its inside information. I'm letting Chomsky in, by the way. Without Obata's footnote, we could not possibly gain the insight into the difference between these two poets and their respective approach to craft. And yet, even without the footnote, there's a certain appeal, even at a single reading. The poem as letter allows a privacy of speech and a certain confidentiality of tone that other genres tend to repel. Epistolary poetry may be said to be the first expression of the confessional school, since its tendency is to include and/or refer to autobiographical and biographical detail not generally known to the public. However, in order to establish a certain degree of accessibility in the poem, these details must reveal their own significance somehow without the context of the poem. Obata's footnote is unnecessary. So that's really at the core of the postcard poem. This year is the 19th year of this festival that we've had in which people exchange postcard poems with each other. If I go back to the share and go back to poetrypostcardfest.org, you can see the main site. Registration closed right around the 4th of July. It opens again for next year on September 1st. It says here, an annual 56-day experiment in spontaneity and community building. This literary event is a self-guided workshop in spontaneous composition, where people sign up to send 31 original poems on postcards to folks on a participation list before the end of August. And that's poetrypostcardfest.org. So that is going to be your charge here. And we're going to take 8 minutes to do that. I have 142 right now. You can address it to a friend. You can type it up in your computer if you want. Quite often I'll type my postcard poems on the Mac, print them, and then glue them onto a card or on construction paper and create a front of the card, an image that gives me a chance to get out of my language brain and get into my graphic brain. So it's a multimodal thing, and it's addictive as hell. Last year there were 608 people. It was a little down this year, I think 494 in 8 different countries. But once you get into that habit of composing spontaneously and being in the moment, by the end of the 31 cards that you send out, you really begin to get some facility at that. And when you can get past your ego and use the poetics of Duke Ellington, who said, if it sounds good, it is. I think that rhymes with what Paul Hoover said. He likes his poetry to have chiming instances. Was that his phrase, Roxy? I think that's what it was. So that sound component, if it sounds good, it is. And you'll find that getting away from end rhyme and getting more into assonance or savoring consonants, as I think Ginsberg said, would be very helpful. So think of a person that you'd like to write to. A close friend is best, a relative or something like that. And we're going to take 8 minutes. We'll go to 151. And you may just start with, dear so-and-so, I'm here in this Zoom workshop, looking out the window of Lake Washington or whatever. So 8 minutes and I'll be the timekeeper. And I'm going to write as well. Okay, I got 151. I'm just going to share screen one more time. Where was that? Okay, and here's the browser I was going to share. I've left some other resources in. There's a poetry postcard exercise right there. And other exercises include this one called Blavatsky Kiger Sanders Sketch Stealing Exercise. How to create a poem from content either about current events or, in the case of Joanne Kiger, about the life of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Then there's Brenda Hillman's Repertorial Poetics, which I think is germane to this conversation. If I click on that, it may or may not. Oh yeah, there it goes. Do you see that? Repertorial, is that up there? Yeah, I see you squinting, so it must be. I could probably make this a little bigger here. But just to give you a taste of this, repertorial poetics can be used to record detail with immediacy while one is doing an action and thinking about something else. So you can go into that. That's another link. And then 2 other things, mammal grafting. Roxy talked about writing from someone else's epigraph. This is a little exercise showing how Michael McClure wrote from his own poems over and over and found himself in a different place and found it interesting to see where it would take him. And then this thing here is a page dedicated to the day song. And that's writing for a whole day as a sort of a vision quest. You can see day song as vision quest, different takes on the day song here. And I would point you to Pierre Joris, who wrote the Cante Diurno, and also to Midwinter Day, written by Bernadette Mayer. So with that said, I think we have time for one or two. Larkin, you've been very quiet there in your cornfield. Is it Iowa or is it heaven? Oh wait, we've got a question
It's
from
Southern California, which is not heaven, is it, Larkin, right now? I hope you're okay with the fires, dear. My friend.
Larkin, before you answer that, we had someone named Rebecca, I think. Was it Rebecca who had her hand up?
Oh yeah, it wasn't a question. I was going to volunteer read if we had a chance, but
Oh,
never
sure.
mind.
Why
No,
don't you
no.
go? Go
Are you
ahead.
sure? Okay. All right. I don't know if I understood the assignment, but it was fun to do. Okay. Hey guy, we're traveling again. This time though, we ended up in the pen. No phone call, so I'm writing you instead. This place called Alligator something something is like a disease. We're hungry and full of skeeter bites and fleas. Remember that family time? That family barbecue in our Georgia summertime? We'll hold on to that one and invent our other joyous places in our swollen, bruised, and broken heads. Keep this as a souvenir of our existence, please. They're trying to disappear us. All our best, Jesus y Maria. Thank you.
Just like that, went right to Alligator Auschwitz. Oh my God, fantastic. Yeah. What do they call it? Alligator Alcatraz, that's right. Alcatraz. Yeah, there was a recent ruling. I think it was an environmental one that went against that. So many things right now to write about. Nicely done, Rebecca. I'm glad you volunteered. Larkin, I wanted you to read. Are you ready to read?
I think I'm going to have to pass because I got a little sidetracked with the word ginkgo, and it brought up a lot of things, and then I cried. So,
Oh,
so
honey, we can talk after if you want.
Okay. So I'm going to pass. I'm enjoying this so much. What beautiful writing from such a short amount of time. I'm incredibly impressed. Thank you for this.
Yes, I think that's a good response. Okay, do we have another volunteer, Martha Kaplan?
Yeah, thank you. This is only partially epistolary, but weather, hey, this weather is confused, can't decide to dark the sky. Oh my, or whether to sun the cloud dry in the heat of night or day the moon. Hot, wet, warm, dry, what color, time, flies toward the butterfly and milks the weed green. It's a graph on a hurricane chart. If you don't like it, change it. Draw the line where you want to storm. If a leader can do it, it'll lead a horse to the brink.
There you have it. I love the way you all slipped in these current events in a very sly way. It reminds me of someone who said, when the MAGA people come after us, go to the library because they don't know where that is. And similarly, they won't get what you did because you didn't hit them over the head with it, which is the way poetry should do it. Anyway, yeah, God, it feels like the emperor's new clothes. I mean, all these tales, we're living them right now. I think I'm going to stop now. My contact information is on that. And I'm wondering, Katie Sarah Zale, if we could put that updated, the link to the updated thing in the chat. I'm going to do that and see if it happens. Hopefully you all will have permission. Very impressed with all the work. And I have to tell you, I'm grateful to the Arizona State Poetry Society. And I'm also in awe of my co-editors, how knowledgeable they are, how much they live this stuff. It's really an honor to be connected to them and doing work with them. So thank you for having me as the token male in your group.
Oh,
Thank you,
token
Paul.
nothing.
Oh, no, Roxy, I yield to you. Go ahead.
Go. Sorry.
Go
Go ahead. I was just going to say, if you guys have any questions, and I guess we have your email, if it's okay if we send you the call when it goes out end of August. And but if you have any questions about how this poetry workshop relates to what we hope will be a call that you'll be responsive to, or even our mission from the first edition, we have a couple minutes. That's all I was going to say, Katie, but you had probably some things you wanted to say. Sorry to interrupt you.
I also want to say that winterinamerica.org is the website for this activity. So if you go to that regularly, I think we're talking about having our own website. Right now it's a page on the Cascadia Poetics Lab, but it does go when you type in winterinamerica.org.
What a great question from Martha Kaplan in the chat, you guys. I have a cento to possibly submit. How much documentation do you want for the quotes? God, I don't know. That's a really good question. Humph.
I think
We
when
do
you're
include notes. We do include notes. So whatever you do, we can always talk to you after the fact and say, we found a little way to edit it. So, be who you are and how you write, and we'll be in contact with you.
If I could
Or just send the notes and
yeah, I think that
yeah.
isn't there, aren't you supposed to put the centos, do like footnotes at the end of it, perhaps?
Yes.
Because it's using other people, is it using other people's or using?
Yeah. And that's better for our publisher, Greg Bim, who's been very generous in all of this, so he doesn't get into trouble. Thank you.
Usually
So,
it's other poets, right?
I can't remember how to do a chat. I'm jumping in.
Betty, go ahead.
Yeah, I tried to download that link and it said I needed access, what Paul put in there. So, I don't know if that's something you have to do on the document. Just, I would love to get a copy of that. And it sounds like there was a lot of discussion about how we might get that. But when I tried to copy the link, it said I didn't have access.
Yeah, I'm going to, I just downloaded it. I'm going to put it in the chat. So let me just go to the chat and go to my downloads, and here it is. So let me see if that'll go in. If it'll let me get the chat. Okay, that should work. So let me just drop it in there. And do you see it now in the chat?
Yes. Yes, we do.
So that's been updated to 5 minutes ago. A cento is a poem where you take all the lines from other poets. So it's sort of a collage poem made up of lines written by other people. Did I get that right? Yeah, somebody said, oh, Martha said that. Okay, good.
And usually at cento, you just put the author's name. You just give them credit. It doesn't need more detail than whoever else. Anything, the only thing I want to remind you of is when Brenda sends out a feedback sheet, please let us know if you're interested in getting together with other poets in this workshop. And, talk, get feedback about your poems before you submit them to the annual contest and or send them to us in the call for poems. Oh, what is that?
Nothing.
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 Oh,
Paul
what
and I
about-
drive everyone nuts because we're constantly either breaking out into some of those bad pop tunes that he referenced earlier, or just,
One other
referring
thing
to
about
something else.
Winter in America, if any of you would like a copy of the book without having to pay shipping and handling, just get hold of me. If you are the Tucson poets, at least you can eliminate the shipping. Anything else, facilitators? Thank you all. I love you all, working with you. We have formed such a lovely community with by doing this anthology, and I very much look forward to working with you all for the next Winter in America. Still will be the title.
Katie, Martha Kaplan has another question at the end. Do we submit through Arizona Poets or the website of Winter in America? It's the latter. Paul will include it in the dedicated website, which is managed by Cascadia Poetics Lab, his organization. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was great poetry that you guys produced today. I'm blown away. Thank you.
Great fun. Great prompts from everybody. Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate all the resources to help us during this time.
Brenda, anything closing that you're muted, but that you want us to, besides reminding people that a feedback sheet is coming?
No, I don't think so. If everybody could just complete the survey when I send it out, or if that's complicated, if you just reply to the email with a little bit of feedback, what you thought about the workshop and everything. So, yeah.
Susanna, were you able to download? I put it in as a PDF as well. Did you click on that? Susanna, are you still here? Okay, very good. All right, I'm going to go eat a can of tomatoes. And thank you, Arizona State Poetry Society, for allowing this. And thank you all for continuing to be creative in your life, because that's what they want. That's what the fascists want to end. They want to end our joy. They want to end our creativity. And every time we're engaged in creative activity, anytime we're engaged in something that tries to bypass the ego, we're in complete resistance to the powers that be. So viva la
Like
resistance.
Andy Warhol painting a can of tomatoes.
Patronize
Which-
libraries because they
Not
are
resistance.
My
Oh.
friends in Texas have no libraries in their schools.
Wow.
Oh, they're taking away the books and okay.
Not
Access
just
to others'
entering the
ideas.
books, but taking the entire libraries out of the elementary schools, especially in Houston, where they have, especially in all the minority areas, they've made them, discipline centers.
Wow.
But as of 2014, they were killing the public libraries, like in Huntsville. First they took out books. Then they occupied them despite the town's protest, and then they privatized it. It's public funds, public libraries. And that was 2014. So goes Texas. We fought that since 2011 here in Wisconsin, but we're not as bad as Texas yet.
No one is. That's where I'm from. I just put my email in the chat in case you want to be
Roxi,
in
you're
touch with me
from
about
Texas.
that, because
I
I have
spent
too
so
many
much-
relatives who live down there, and I just
Yeah, me
am
too.
building up compassion so I can eventually have conversations, which, by the way, is something we're trying to do in this anthology, is be a little bit more reflective than reactive and angry. We didn't really talk about that, but that, along with aesthetic diversity, is kind of the keystone of our approach, and it's hard.